Okay, Mark, it's all happening. So over to you.
Okay, brilliant. Well, welcome everyone to this amazing edition of Lit Balm. Today, we are absolutely delighted to welcome Kevin Gallagher and spoke 10, which includes from the issue Robert Kelly, Charlotte Mandell, Tiffany Higgins, Márcia Wayna Kambeba, Lívia Natália, and Alex Simōes. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. But before we start with the feature, and by the way, I'll hand it over to Kevin after we've had our reading to give an introduction. But before we get to that, let me introduce my co-host, Cassandra Atherton, who is an award-winning prose poet and international expert on prose poetry. Her prose poetry is widely anthologized and has been translated into Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. Cassandra's published more than 30 books and is currently writing an illustrated book of prose poetry on the Hiroshima Maidens with funding from the Australia Council and the Victorian government. Cassandra also co-wrote prose poetry, an introduction, and co-edited the anthology of Australian prose poetry. She was commissioning editor for Wesley magazine and professor of writing and literature in Melbourne, Australia. And where is Cassandra? Did she drop out, John?
Looks like she dropped out, Mark. Oh, no, here she is. She's here.
Must be the hotel Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Oh, here she's coming back.
It is. Sorry, my hotel Wi-Fi apparently clapped itself out when I went live on Facebook, but we're all good. So, where are we up to?
It's up to you reading, actually.
Excellent. One of my favorite parts. Okay, I've been looking at ekphrastic work based on dance, which I'm terming ballophrasis to match that which is based on music called mellophrasis. And this one's called timing. You refashion my body like a Fosse dancer, turned in toes, bent arms, curved shoulders. During rehearsals, I finger snap my way into your heart. Click pause, click pause. Your notes are full of stick figures and illegible scrawls, squiggles, wriggles. I'm not sure if I have them the right way up as I try to copy what could be a sideways shuffle or a soft boiled egg hand. Yoke, yoke. In your bed, I'm your jagged little muse, the triple threat of alcohol, sacchanol, and dexedrine on your sheets. In a bowler hat, fishnet suspenders, and a skin-tight tuxedo jacket, I audition for the role of myself in the documentary of your life. It's a glitter and doom aesthetic. Waiting to hear if I've got the role, I tuck in my elbows and extend my lower arms, imagine water running over my body and the electric zap of your hips in motion. I would like to introduce the incredible Mark Vincennes, who is an Anglo-Swiss-American poet, a fiction writer, translator, editor, publisher, designer, multi-genre artist, and musician. He's published over 40 books of poetry, translations, and fiction, including more recently, The Pearl Diver of Irun-Mani, The King of Prussia is Drunk on Stars, The Mayfly Codex, 3 Telltale Love Signs, Thieves' Canto, The Visitation, a novelette from Survision Island, and forthcoming Spells for the Wicked with Unlikely Books and No More Animal Poems with White Pine Press. It's one of my faves. Mark is also a prolific translator and has translated, the regulars know this one, from German, Romanian, and French. He has published 11 books of translations, most recently an Audible Blue Selected Poems 1963 to 2016 by award-winning Swiss poet and novelist Klaus Matz. And it won the 2023 Massachusetts Book Prize for Translated Literature. His own work has been translated into many languages, including Japanese, Chinese, Russian, French, Italian, Romanian, Greek, German, and Icelandic. He's currently working on a novel entitled The Age of Occasions. Vincennes is editor and publisher of Mad Hat Press and publisher of New American Writing and spoKe. He's lived all over the world, from Brazil to China to Iceland to India. He was born in Matilda Hospital on the Peak in Hong Kong, but he now lives in a farm in rural western Massachusetts overlooking Herman Melville's Greylock Mountain, Melville's inspiration for Moby Dick, where there are, wait for it everyone, changes every week, where there are still more cabbage worms, monkey slugs, and tobacco hornworms than primates. Pretty excited by that one, Mark. Have you got a poem for us?
Oh, yes, I do. This is from a book in progress, currently called Megalopolis, but I discovered that Francis Ford Coppola is coming out with a movie with the same name. So I'm rethinking the title. But anyway, the idea is the discovery of a lost civilization through the layers of archaeology expressed in poetic form. This is called Fragments of a City Called Y in Linear B. A21 3B, broken wax seal, tooth marks. Eastern hills of dirt and sand, broken bones and smashed pottery guard the city. A long line of vendors assembles on the first vestiges of muddy streets and cobbled lanes. The trallium, they call it. Trees are logged, stacked and counted, then shipped off somewhere even more bountiful, where colorful birds are shot, garroted, plucked, roasted and happily polished off with lemon rind, shallot, finely sliced turmeric and garlic. You can purchase delectable bird heart skewers and hair feathers on almost every corner. Monkeys clamor in the trees, and some of them, the intrepid, leap palm-leaved huts and the tiled inner city and skirt the first muddy channels of the growing sprawl and ooze. Refuse collects swirling soups of gray and green, and frothy, spumy white collect fruit fly swarms. Stirring films of sheer plastics radiate with brilliant ultraviolets. A67-1DE, unbroken wax seal, fragment torn in half. Vendors assemble their hard-won wares, coal, coke, and iron ore from the Moss Mountains, parasols from Profusio, and pottery made in the heady stream which was Ruffello. Saffron and spices from the salt islands, and snail shells and pearls from the mother islands, coral and turquoise from the purple umbra of Trottelheim. A344 17H, broken wax seal, scratch marks, thumbprint. The faithful and the faithless converged upon the new city square, which was not quite yet square. The city planners had been at their prints day and night for weeks and weeks. The laborers who came from as far afield as Magento arrived here hoping to find a city plated in gold. The planners took note and designated an area on the furthest fringes of the swamplands where the immigrants could dig to their heart's desires. A697 3BC fragment. From the house of the heavens, discover the latest storm. Once we filled our teeth with lead, later only vice. And that's that new poem from Megalopolis. And I'm delighted now to introduce the fantastic Charlotte Mandell and Sabine Hugh. Charlotte has translated 100 books, including works by Matthias N.R., Jonathan Little, Jean-Luc Nancy, Maurice Blanchot, André Breton, and Philippe Sopo, and most recently, Marcel Proust. She is currently translating Guerre, a newly discovered manuscript by Céline, and Déserteur, the new novel by Matthias N.R. You can find out more about Charlotte at www.charlotte2tsmandell1word.com. And Sabine Hu is a French poet, novelist, essayist, and literary translator born in Saigon, Vietnam. She grew up in France and has lived in England, the United States, Canada, and Israel. She's published a dozen books, including the poetry collections Kvar Lo, editions Enrage and Company in 2016, which won France 2017 Copo Poetry Prize, and the novel Elvis à la Radio, which won the 2023 Jean-Jacques Rousseau Prize for autobiography. She holds a PhD in linguistics from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and has published more than 20 translations, including major works by Anne Sexton, Gwendolyn Brooks, Uri Orlev, and Ilya Kaminsky. She won the 2022 Alain Bosquet Poetry Prize for her translation of Kaminsky's Deaf Republic. Some of her work has been translated into English by Amy Hollowell, including Dans les Tournants, Into the Turning, and her new poetry collection due out in May with Edition Bruno Duxy. She is currently translating poetry collections by Diane Seuss, Alice Oswald, Diane de Palma, among others, among others, for French and Belgian publishers. Speaking Skin was published by Ancrage and Company in 2019, along with paintings by Philippe Augustini. Her website is SabineHuynh.com. We'll put it in the chat. Welcome, Charlotte and Sabine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't see Sabine there. Kevin, does Kevin want to say something first? Kevin Gallagher?
That's hard.
Sure, you want me to, Mark? Hey, first of
Mark,
all,
you're muted. Sorry, Mark, you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, so might as well. Please go ahead, Kevin.
sure. Well, hey, first of all, Cassandra and Mark Vincennes, thanks so much for having us on here again. My name's Kevin Gallagher. I'm the editor of spoKe, and we're celebrating our 10th year and our 10th anniversary. Excited to have everyone here. So glad you could help me celebrate these poems by the folks that Mark will introduce. Let me tell you a little bit about the magazine. We were started 10 years ago in response to the Boston bombing, and we've always been about three things: a global poetry that engages with or is from the world's places, cultures, and literary traditions, past, present, and visions of the future. 2, an American poetry that sees the English language and literary tradition as core, but one of many routes and paths for poetry. 3, a poetics that attempts to innovate language, idiom, sensibility, and poetic form while maintaining its public presence. We see ourselves in a Boston tradition of magazines like Poems for a Dime by John Wheelwright, Set, Measure, Fire Exit, Exact Change, Compost, Lift, Polis, The Poker, Let the Bucket Down, and many others. But perhaps the one that influences this the most is Sid Corman's Origin, because in Origin, they would put big chunks of poets or groups of poets so you could really let them open up and breathe. And that's what we've done in each one of them. We just feature a handful of folks. In our first issue, I guess 10 years ago or so, I don't exactly date them, I just number them. So I think it's around 10 years. Our first issue was a real feature on Fanny Howe, also a poet named Damon Krakowski and Taylor Stower. Our second one focused on women poets from Uruguay. And we started featuring early work from Burning Deck Press. In each issue, we had Frederick Forte in that one, and also a great interview with Christopher Ricks on Bob Dylan and T.S. Eliot, which was pretty cool. Our third one paid homage to John Brooks Wheelwright, the great, somewhat unsung Boston poet that John Ashbery said is the only American poet that did anything beyond Eliot and Pound. Our fourth one featured Bunny Lang, Boston's own Bunny Lang on Bay State Road. Had a whole bunch of folks, Bill Berkson, Keith Waldrop, Patrick Pritchett, Ron Padgett, commenting, writing about her, and Mark Vincennes is focused in that one too. You may recognize Larry Eagner in our 5th issue, a whole focus on him. In our 6th, we had Sam Cornish and a whole bunch of Russian poets as well as Garrett Lansing. I won't walk through every single one of them because today we're here to celebrate the folks that have been in our 10th issue. We've had 2 issues already, 2 launches already, but in Boston, and today's folks are not Boston oriented, as Mark will share with you. So thanks so much, everyone, for coming, and especially thanks to the poets, because this group of folks I had never met before. I just loved their work and wrote out to them.
Kevin, one more thing. Don't forget about the spoke editions.
Yeah, all right. I didn't know if I was sharing that secret. Well, one thing I should say is that for the past 2 issues, spoke is now an imprint of Mad Hat Press. And one of the things that we're going to do in this year is have a spoke editions, well, a book series. So stay tuned to that. I'll drop our webpage in the chat after I hand it over to Mark here, and just excited to read the friends that I was able to share in the magazine with you folks, share them with you folks live. Here you go, Mark.
Thanks, Kevin. And so over to you, Charlotte and Sabine, please. Empecé.
Naveen, hello. This is the first time we're reading together, so this is exciting for us.
Yes, it is very exciting. I'm very shy, so sorry for. Anyways, thank you very much, Kevin, for publishing my poems in spoke. It's a great honor, and thank you, Mark, for the introduction, and of course, thank you. I can't even thank you enough, Charlotte, for translating my poems.
It was my pleasure. We'll be reading on page 10. Is that where we're going to start?
Well, the book is not the book is not numbered, so I mean the pages are not numbered. So
Oh no, I mean from spoke. Oops, I don't think you have it yet.
No, I don't have it.
It's on the way.
All right.
You'll be getting it soon.
Definitely on the way. I sent one up. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So would you like me to start, Charlotte? How should we do this? I mean, should we do one poem each, or?
Yeah, I think maybe you start and then I'll read the poem, and then yeah, we'll alternate. I think that would be
All
good.
right. Yeah, that would be less. Okay. Okay. Ému et vent dans le cou, la langue va craintive et fervente, traverse vivement la ville fardée de poussière, foule les pétales maculés, sol ou ciel, c'est pareil. Partout s'étale son visage, 150 frissons par minute, dans le vertige nouveau, l'unique où se lever.
So this is page 15 of spoke. Moved and wind in her neck, her tongue goes fearful and fervent, eagerly crosses the city powdered with dust, treads on the spattered petals, earth or sky, it's the same everywhere, spreads out her face, 150 shivers per minute, in the new vertigo, the only one in which to cuddle up.
Le corps frémit de l'envie de toucher. La peau pense aux mains. Vibrer encore et encore. Parler peau contre peau. Écouter peau, pencher vers demain. Peut-être les caresses composent ce qui ressemble au premier serment.
The body trembles with desire to touch the skin, thinks with hands, vibrating, still and still speaking skin. Against skin, listen to skin, lean towards tomorrow, perhaps. Caresses, compose what resembles the first pledges.
Il y a tant, peau à mordre, presque un peu, mots simplement, sans dire beaucoup, bourdonne durablement, contient tout, forcément.
There is time, so much skin to bite, almost a few words simply, without saying much, hums for a long time, contains everything necessarily.
Grand écart par-dessus les flaques de mémoire. La langue défie le vide, se frotte au silence, délie ses doigts, dégrafe, recueille et plante. La douceur. Elle avance avec ce trésor, son cœur bat l'indifférence des rues. Le désespoir et l'espoir tapis ensemble sous les marches où, assise, elle attendra le regain. Ses mains, toutes aux ondulations de sa peau, sous les traces indélébiles.
Big gap above the puddles of memory. The tongue defies the void, rubs against silence, unties her fingers, unfasten, gather and plant gentleness. She moves forward with this treasure, her heart beats, the indifference of streets, despair and hope, lurking together under the steps where she sits waiting for the renewal of her hands, all with undulations of her skin under indelible traces.
Elle n'arpente plus, elle nage en écartant. Les ronces, ses lèvres. Dans la touffeur des cœurs aphones s'ouvrent des clairières d'embrasser, de répondre oui, toi, mon ébranlement, ainsi cette beauté, ou ne sera pas.
She no longer paces, she swims, spreading, the burrs her lips, in the swelter of voiceless hearts, open clearings to kiss, to say yes, you, my trembling, thus this beauty or will not be.
Sur le dos, l'appel des paysages. Tes mains, pulpe et plexus, veines, grosses, marginales, vaisseau, trajet flexueux, arcade, enroulement, torsion, renversement, pression, chaleur, doigts, confluents, ouvrant le feuillage, lumière lassie de nous, tension tendre, le monde en toi rassemblé.
On the back, the call of landscapes, your hands, pad and plexus, veins, thick, peripheral vessels, pathways, winding, arcades, whorls, tension, reversals, pressure, heat, fingers, confluences, opening, the greenery, light tracery of us, tension of the tender, the world and you gathered.
Il y a des portes sous la peau qu'enfoncent nos effleurements, au milieu d'illusions urbaines. Nous sommes là, nous aimant, nous endormant. En vie, nous dormons, à plein corps, innocents comme des enfants.
There are doors under the skin, which our caresses push in the middle of urban illusions. We are there, loving each other, to putting each other to sleep. In life, we give ourselves, with all our bodies, innocent as child.
Dehors, l'horizon, les grues rongent, les corps vulnérables, exposés derrière les vitres de tours éphémères. Dedans, l'amour que nous faisons, serine l'impossible. Qu'il prenne son temps, nous oublie, nous laisse nous parler ce langage d'amant, tout en mosaïque d'égarement.
Outside the horizon, the cranes are gnawing, bodies vulnerable, exposed behind the windows of ephemeral skyscrapers. Inside, the love we make teaches the impossible to take its time. Forget us, let us speak to each other. The language of lovers made all of a mosaic of derangement.
Le sommeil, une autre plage du don de soi, blotti, enlacé, douce lassitude. Loin des pudeurs, l'abandon met en relief les mots qui trouvent demeure dans la chair, ce grand poème.
Sleep, another shore of gift of self, huddled, intertwined, sweet weariness, far from shame, abandoned, brings out words that find a home in flesh, that great poem.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sabine. That was
Thank
lovely.
you.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Thanks.
Absolutely gorgeous. Next, I'm going to introduce Tiffany Higgins, who is the translator of Márcia Wayna Kambeba, Lívia Natália de Souza Santos, or Lívia Natália, and of course, Simōes as well, whose bio I'm not finding here, but I will dig that up. Let me introduce Tiffany first. Tiffany is a writer, translator, and Fulbright scholar whose research and writing focuses on traditional peoples in the Brazilian Amazon, especially as concerns their river forest homes. The Pulitzer Rainforest Journalism Fund and the Banff Center for the Arts have supported her work. She was a 2020 Annie Clark Tanner Fellow in Environmental Humanities at the University of Utah. Her narrative journalism and poetry appear in Granta, Guernica Poetry, and many other places. And she's the author of 2 collections of poems, and she's finishing a manuscript of translations of the poetry of Márcia Wayna Kambeba, of the indigenous Kabemba people of Brazil. So I think I'm going to hand the mic over to you, Tiffany, and maybe give us a little bit more info about these wonderful Brazilian poets that we're hearing from. I've got to go and find one of my bios in the interim. Is that cool?
No worries. Yes, Márcia Kambeba, I'll give it short. Márcia, eu vou te apresentar, tudo bem? We're very lucky to have Márcia here because she travels throughout Brazil. Ela está arrumando sua mala. She's packing her suitcase now to go to Rio de Janeiro tomorrow. So we're very lucky to have her for this 10 minutes or so. I think probably she's going to bow out after that so she can finish packing her suitcase to go to Rio tomorrow. So Márcia is a poet of the Kambeba people, the Omagua Kambeba people, and she grew up in the Solimões River area, and now she lives in Belém do Pará. Belém is the capital of Pará state, and this is all in the Brazilian Amazon. She is a photographer, she is a musician, she obviously is a poet. She's currently getting her doctorate in linguistics. She already has a master's in geography, and she's an amazing poet. So I'm very pleased to be able to bring her poetry to you. So one of the things that Márcia does in her poems is that she uses Tupi words. Tupi is a linguistic trunk of an indigenous linguistic trunk. And the Kambeba language itself was very impacted by colonization and Portuguese enslaving indigenous Kambeba. So she integrates Kambeba words, and she also integrates concepts, enchanted spirits, as well as having all these other parameters about political resistance and indigenous rights and reaffirming indigenous identity. So I'd like to pass the word to Márcia. We have and I'll try to give notes. She'll read, and then I'll try to give some notes explaining a few concepts that I kept in the Tupi original, and explaining some footnotes. Márcia, eu vou te passar a palavra. Poderia ler, por favor?
Eu agradeço o convite que me foi feito através da Tiffany para estar aqui com vocês, representando a Amazônia e falando um pouco dessa poesia da floresta.
Quer que eu traduzir? She says, I'm very pleased to be here with you all, through Tiffany, and to be presenting the Amazon and her poetry.
O poema que eu vou ler aqui, Os Filhos das Águas dos Solimões. A água é a mãe que sustenta a vida que nasce como flor. Alimenta a planta e o ser vivente É a estrada onde anda o caçador. Na enchente vem veloz e furiosa, derrubando ribanceiras e plantações. Afeta a vida do indígena e ribeirinho. É um ciclo que se renova a cada estação. Na vazante, o rio quase some. A praia começa a surgir. A água, agora bem calminha, não tem forças para a roça destruir. Nas margens de um rio em formação, vive um povo que a água fez nascer. Em um parto de dor e emoção, na várzea, o Kambeba escolheu viver. Mas em um contato fatal com um povo mais socializado, fez dos herdeiros das águas um povo desaldeado. Tomando seu solo sagrado, sem dor, piedade ou compaixão, os Kambeba foram escravizados, apresentados à civilização, exploraram a sua força, forjando uma falsa proteção.
Beautiful, Márcia. Obrigada pela leitura, muito belíssima. So this poem is actually a very painful poem. She's recounting the history of colonization of the Kambeba people. The Portuguese made trips going up the Amazon River, raiding for indigenous people for slaves. And one of their so many indigenous people ended up desaldeado, which means villageless, which implies like a whole loss of their culture, and they're forced to wear clothes. And actually her cultures, they had an actual plant that they used to make clothes. So they were actually, that's very, very unique. Sorry, I'm getting a message from Zoom saying, do you want to switch your language? And forced to give up their customs and settle in one place. And was really a terrible history that led to so much cultural loss that has influenced the Kambeba people today, because the language loss, and with it, culture has been tremendous. Here comes the poem. Children of the waters of the Solimões River. The water is the mother who sustains the life that is born like a flower. She nourishes plants and living beings. She is the street where the fisher folk walk. In the flood season, she comes swift and furious, bringing down riverbanks and plantings, affecting indigenous and Ribeirinho lives. Those are non-indigenous people, they're called Ribeirinhos. A cycle renewed in each of the 4 river seasons. For anyone following along, we're looking at page 216, sorry about that. And she's describing that in the Amazon, there's all these cycles, there's 4 distinct cycles of the water and of the waters, and they all have to do with the time of the year, the amount of water. So this is what she's just describing, this kind of ebbing and flowing that forms part of their culture. In the season of ebbing waters, the river almost disappears and natural beaches begin to emerge. The water, now quite calm, lacks the strength to destroy gardens. On the edges of the fluctuating river live a people whom the water birthed in exaltation and pain. The Kambeba chose to live on the floodplain. But deadly contact with the people of progress made the inheritors of the waters of villageless people, their sacred soil taken without conscience, pity, or compassion. The Kambeba were enslaved, presented to civilization, their strength exploited, forging a false protection. Márcia, queria ler outro poema, por favor.
Eu vou ler o poema Natureza em Chama.
It's Nature in Flames with everybody, which is on page 218. Pode-
Na terra sagrada que Tupã criou, do seio materno se ouve o clamor da mãe natureza, sofrendo de dor. O fogo ardente ao longe se vê, queimando a mata sem que nem porquê, as folhas se torcem, querendo viver. No solo desnudo, os restos mortais do verde da vida e dos animais, queimados, sofridos em cinzas reais. Dos gritos agudos se ouve o clamor, do fruto ardendo na chama e calor, ceifado, perdido, o fogo calou. Dos olhos tristes uma lágrima cai, o lamento de dor com o vento se vai, varrendo o chão, varrendo o chão.
Beautiful. É um assunto com muita dor, né? So this is a very painful subject. Os leitores estão dizendo que o som da sua voz está muito bonito. For the people saying her voice is very nice, she's very grateful for the compliment.
Eu vou pedir licença para cumprimentar a Márcia, querida. Muito bom ouvir sua voz, ouvir português e uma alegria estarmos juntos nessa publicação bonita.
Muito obrigada. Eu me sinto tão bem com o senhor falando em português comigo. Inglês.
Você, por favor. Sorry, we are talking in our language.
É um momento de conexão. They're taking advantage of this. They're in different parts of Brazil. He's in the northeast, and she's in the Amazon. So they're taking advantage to share this moment, especially because Márcia doesn't understand English. So they're meeting each other for the first time. Okay, so this is another really difficult subject. Unfortunately, during my time in the Amazon, Nature in Flames is the title, and I saw so many times, as Márcia has, forests burning and being set on fire purposely to clear the area usually for cattle pasture, and it's really upsetting. And it hasn't, it's gone down a little bit with the new government, but really it continues, which is, not maybe what some people are hearing. Nature in Flames. On the sacred, I should say, Tupã is the word for the father divinity, the male divinity. On the Nature in Flames. On the sacred earth, Tupã created from the maternal breast that sustains, Mother Nature is heard, crying out in pain. The searing fire from a distance is seen, burning the forest for no apparent reason. The leaves twist, wishing to live. On the bare soil, the mortal remains of the green of life, and the animals burned, suffering in real ashes. In sharp shrieks, you hear the scream of fruit burning in flames and heat, lost harvest that the fire silenced. From sad eyes, a tear falls, a lament of pain carried by the ground, sweeping the ground, sweeping the ground. Merece applause. Deserves applause for sure. Can I want to check in with Kevin, and do we have time for more, or should we stop there?
We should probably move on to the next poet,
Fantastic.
which I'm happy to do. Would you like me to introduce, or would you like to introduce Lívia Natália?
Lívia is not able to come tonight after all. So let's thank Márcia one more time, because I think Márcia needs to go pack her suitcase.
Oh, sure.
So, Márcia, a gente vai se despedir para você vai arrumar a mala, tudo bem? And so let's thank Márcia one more time for, for her beautiful reading. Thank you, Márcia. E boa viagem. Have a good trip.
Boa viagem e
Bom viagem.
sigamos em contato, Márcia.
Obrigada, fico agradecida pela participação aqui com vocês. Tchau.
Ciao, ciao, boa viagem. She thanks everybody for being able to participate. Ciao, Martha, obrigada. Okay, so we have
Yeah, Alex, right?
Alex.
So
Yeah,
shall I try to do
sure,
it?
go for it, go for
Pronounce
it.
the books.
Please do. So Alex Simōes, please take it away.
Is a poet and performer. His books include Minha Terra Tem, Ladeiras from Camure, Assim na Terra como no Selfie, Parello, 2021, Transformação Organismo, and Contra Sonetos from Mondego in 2015, in addition to participating in poetry gatherings, literary festivals, and multilingual events, both in Bahia and beyond since the 1990s. Alex has been conducting performances, including Voce Tem Seda and A Cappella de Wali, blurring the boundaries between art and life, between poetry and other languages, in what he calls performances. His blog is 2bit.com, which we'll put in the chat. Welcome, Alex, and I hope I pronounced things well.
Very well.
Pretty
Better than
well,
me.
pretty well, very well. Good job. Alex,
Hi, Tiffany.
over to you, over to you.
Thank you so much for the invitation, for translating my poems to the English. Thank you so much for presenting me to some publications so wonderful as spoKe. It's wonderful to know that I make part of this group of poets of a publication of a publication that is 10-year-old. It's very nice to be, and to listen to French, to Portuguese, to English, and this in our universal language called poetry. So I'm gonna read 3 poems based on some streets of my city, Salvador da Bahia, which was for about 3 centuries the city and the harbor most visited in the South Hemisphere, and for 3 centuries. And the first one is Soneto à Ladeira da Montanha. O nome era Barão Homem de Melo, só que nesta cidade trocam os nomes não só das ruas, mas também dos homens. Ficou Ladeira da Montanha. Belo, belo projeto de interseção entre as cidades, a alta e a baixa, em todos os sentidos que se encaixa a terra da globalização. Aqui passamos todos, mas as putas ficam, assim como suas histórias, filhos e, principalmente, os abortos. Aqui e só aqui a mãe das putas cuida dos filhos da cidade. Os mortos e os vivos têm mãe preta, nossa glória.
Muito bom. Very good. So, so these laderas, I had the privilege to be able to, hang out with Alexia a long time ago. My gosh, in Salvador, the capital of Bahia. And there are these, they call them like these alleys, very steep alleys, and they connect the high part and the low part of the city. And so he's writing these sonnets, and this is a part of a book of sonnets that some people have said that kind of remade the sonnet in Brazil. I would say yes, with queer Black content. I love place poems, particularly poems that really describe places. And so I really loved these poems about his city.
Thank you.
And he uses the word ashe. Alexi, how would you translate ashe?
Yeah, it's really hard because it comes from the Yoruba, and it's not, or it will not translation.
Yeah.
It's always a problem, but
Yes.
it's kind of energy.
Yes.
Could call like a spiritual energy, but in Brazil and contemporary Bahia, it's also like a word that we use for axé music. So it's a traditional Yoruba word that was appropriated for a kind of music that is like very commercial. When we use this word, in this case, we're saying about this contradiction because it's a traditional Yoruba word related, but it's also an appropriated use for sell stereotypes of the city of the Bahia. And
Very well.
I ask you permission to say one thing more, that Mãe Preta, the Black Mother, she was a person, and I had the privilege to know her. She was a prostitute and a house of prostitution, and she retired, and she dedicated her life to take care of the sons of her colleagues. And I had the privilege to know that person that existed.
What an amazing story. Thank you, Alex. Oh my gosh. Okay. So you're going to hear the Black Mother. It's capitalized in the poem. We're looking at page 234 for people who are following along. Sonnet of the Ladeira da Montanha. The name of the street was Baron Homem de Melo. But in this city, names got changed, not only of streets, but of men. It became Ladeira da Montanha. Beautiful project of the intersection between cities, the high and the low, all the meanings that our land of axé, globalization, encloses. Here everyone passes through, but the whores remain, along with their stories, children and especially the aborted. Here and only here, our mother of the whores, she cares for the city's children, the dead and the living who share a Black mother, our glory.
Thank you.
Outro
Go ahead.
poema, Alex.
Eu canto para as paredes. O preconceito é uma parede enorme, contra a qual desde sempre me empurraram, mas se tentaram e não me executaram, é que aprendi bem cedo que não dorme o apontado. Preto, bicha, pobre. Preto, bicha, pobre. Preto, bicha, pobre. No paredão cresceu e ficou forte, ainda com a dor que o véu da morte, bem do seu lado, alguns amigos cobre. E é por eles que não me vitimo, nem quero mais derrubar a parede. Apenas canto para além do íntimo desejo. Reforçar rizoma e rede, cheia de nós, que não estou só, sou vivo. Picho a parede, verso afirmativo.
Beautiful. And this poem, well, I would like to humbly say that I asked Alex to write this poem many years ago.
It
Yeah,
exists because of you.
exactly.
Because of this publication.
This was for an earlier anthology, I don't know, around 10 years ago, something like that. And I said, Alex, could you write a poem? I knew that he didn't really have a poem about walls. So I said, could you write a poem about walls? And he said, sure. And for this one, though, I did update the translation. So it's not exactly the same thing. Okay, I sing, this is page 236. I sing through walls. Prejudice is an enormous wall against which they forever pushed me. But if they tried and didn't execute me, it's because I learned early on who's targeted doesn't sleep. And I'll read it like he did. Poor, black, queer, black, poor, queer, black, poor, queer, grew up on the big wall and got strong, still with pain that the veil of death of friends at his side collects. And for them, I don't victimize me, nor wish any longer to break down the wall. I merely sing beyond to my intimate. I desire to weave rhizome and web all full of us. So I'm not alone, I'm alive. I spray paint the wall, my verse affirmative. É isso. Acho que tudo que a gente tem é o tempo que a gente tem.
Okay.
Thank you very much for listening. I'd like to thank again, yeah, it's an amazing poem.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin and Mark, for
Exactly.
for the
I'd like to
publication.
thank Kevin
you,
and spoKe generally for commissioning us to do this portfolio. And I'm very inspired to be in this huge tome among amazing poets. So thank you again, Kevin and everybody.
Thanks so much. Such an honor to have you folks in here. So thank you.
Mark, are we going with the next? I can do that because I have the bio.
Just here. 1 second. Apologies. And so, yeah, thank you so much, Tiffany and Alex and Márcia, and well, unfortunately, Lívia Natália could not be with us. And now, of course, we're delighted to hear from Robert Kelly, who's the author of many books, mostly of poetry, but also fiction, drama, and essays. After the 5-volume Island cycle, various publishers, the most recent works are the long narrative poem, The Cup, and the collected short stories, both from Macpherson, and the most recent collection of poems, Linden Word, from Black Square Editions. Robert lives in Hudson Valley with his wife, the distinguished French translator Charlotte Mandell. Welcome, Robert.
Hello, dear world. And I have the whole world to talk to tonight without moving from my chair. Brazil, Tel Aviv, Boston, the exotic, and even Mount Graham, and Australia of the wombat. Hello, I've enjoyed the readings that I've heard, and I'm very happy to be joining you. Am I visible?
Yes, you are. You are.
Being invisible was only a part of my childhood aspirations. I've given that up long ago. So I'm going to read from this copious and elegant recent issue of spoKe. What I want to read is a poem poem called Leucothea. Leucothea was the Greek goddess of sea spray, sea foam. The foam comes in, flashes us, washes us, refreshes us, and then disappears. And a moment later, it's back. So in a sense, she is the goddess of the continuity of the discontinuous, if I can put it that way. But we don't have to think about that. But leucothea by itself in Greek, leukothea in modern Greek, leucothea meant white goddess. And when you say that word, white goddess, you have to think of the great poet Robert Graves, English poet, whose book, The White Goddess, is a magnificent, and perhaps the greatest of all, summoning of knowledge of mythology and how it interacts with poetry. Read it if you haven't. It made my life. My poem, though, is far less expansive than that. And one could think of it as a series of poems. It's a fairly long poem, longish. I like long poems. A longish poem, we could think of it as a conversation between a young man or an old man and the goddess. Or you could think of it some other way. Thinking about poetry is entirely the reader's job. I never know what the poem really means. That's up to you. Anyway, leucothea, I'll read a little bit of this. Get it on the device. Thank you. He wept a road in front of him, followed it where his sorrow led. But why am I grieving? I am no crusader, avenger, or missionary. I'm just a self, if that, in the gloom of a world, this war world, such a sad place. But here was no battling, no triremes on the middle sea, no stark, just darkness, jet-free clouds. The azimuth must mean something, green, clear. If you can spell it, it must be real. Canto 2. But which way is up? Out of the doldrum of desire. She answered. He answered his silence, saying, with you and you, it's all about going. Crusaders, explorers, exiles, emissaries, emigrants, refugees, invaders, all about going. Migration, vacation, all about being gone from where it found you when it set the whole world in the exact order for the hour of your birth. Go, roaring gone. Your mind is music. The measure is skip and a hop. But he answered, Ollie, you said nothing about desire. Her answer, a little sweetened the silence. Skip and a hop, leap, and you'll be here desire is always about being somewhere else. A skip and a hop and find the music. Thank you. Lovely to meet you all.
Thank you, Robert, very much. And of course, thank you, Charlotte and Sabine and Tiffany and Márcia and Alex as well for a wonderful reading. And I think what I'm going to do now is hand the mic over to my cohort, Cassandra, for the open mic section of the reading.
Hey everyone, brilliant reading. And we've got a short but pithy open mic for those of you that are interested in some exciting poetry that goes down in the open each week. And we have to start with John Wessex because that's just the way it goes at Lit Balm. John is always the best way to open the open. John.
Let me share my screen for a second here. And so this is yarn bombing. Okay, it's, you know, with a bunch of crazy knitters put knit stuff over public places. The poet Beth Hartley told me about it, and of course I figured I had to give it the John Wessex treatment. So let me stop the share and read you a little bit opening of a story called Alpaca Sunrise, and I will post the rest of the story someplace in the chat, so if you can't want to read the rest of it. Detective Dirk Steelcage hated knitting even more than he hated Brussels sprouts, and he hated Brussels sprouts. He was the kind of cop who didn't let rules like the Fourth Amendment stand in the way of justice. No matter what the limp-wristed politicians at City Hall said, he'd never seen a jaywalker reoffend after a few dozen jacketed hollow points in the back. His unorthodox methods earned him a few nicknames in the department, such as thug, asshole, and trigger-happy motherfucker. In spite of his efforts, crime was rampant. It was going to be a long day of searching department stores for contraband scarves and pepper-spraying managers who asked to see a warrant. What better way to start it off than with a hearty breakfast of sugar, coffee, and sodium nitrate at Flo's 5-spot. Shock greeted him like a punch to the jaw when he climbed out of his 30-year-old Ford Crown Victoria instead of the plate glass window that hadn't been cleaned since the Sam Yorty administration and the burned-out neon sign that read Flo Ive Pot. He found a tapestry woven of nightmares covering the diner's facade. This wasn't the Bayou tapestry, but a ghastly crochet of a knight jousting with a unicorn in front of an audience of Belgian surrealists that would make the most hardened gunnery sergeant's blood run cold. Ever seen something like that, Dirk? Flor wore an apron over her margarine-colored polyester dress. Her hair was a chemically enhanced auburn, and her eyeshadow was the color of the LA sky. You mean yarn bombing? Yeah. Dirk touched the .50 caliber Desert Eagle nestled in his shoulder holster for comfort. In Cali, Colombia. Yarn bombing? It's a kind of graffiti that uses knit or crochet to deface public objects. Well, isn't that the cutest thing? Damn it, Flo, these yarn bombers are nothing to sneeze at. If you don't remove those stitches pronto, your dino will be a Knits Templar territory. I don't need to tell you what that means. It means thugs shaking down your patrons in exchange for cheap mittens and restrooms occupied in spite of the customer's only sign. So I'll leave it at that and post a link to the rest of the story in the chat. Thank you very much.
And that, everyone, is the John Wessex treatment. So it's wonderful. I encourage you to chase off the ending of that one. Next, we have a new open mic Lit Balmer. Joan is going to be next. Joan, what have you got for us?
Me?
Yeah, you.
Okay, yes. Someone earlier in the meeting mentioned Boston and New England, and I have something to do with that I have pulled out of a poem. So it's called As We See the Bridge. Infrequent summer Sundays in the back seat, younger brother Billy and I square off with play pokes, pinches, sneak hair pulls, and an hour-long warm-up that starts the real fight, while up front alone, our mother, solo referee, warns time out or else. Why silence falls as mother's radio music flows, creating our brief quiet that soon disappears as the new fierce sibling competition begins at the starting line of the game, deep in New England tradition, whose victor will flaunt all day the title of being first in the car to spot the Cape Cod Bridge in the distance. Our rare and frequent summer Sundays, teenagers now, younger brother Billy and I prefer separate space from each other. Mother alone, her need to get away from the usual, settles for the company of sibling complainers, her hostages and reluctant companions, all the way from Boston to the Cape. Sharing radio frees us from when our station is allowed, but Billy and I must wait while Sinatra and his friends we have no interest in blare in the time allotted to our mother. Suddenly, familiarized by trees and signs, our childhood rivalry rears, this time bringing our New England game ever only tie, as together we yell, "Bridge!" for the first time, laugh. Rarest of infrequent drives alone, my music on the radio, the drive to the Cape rushes memory of a bridge, the rainbow one Billy first spotted, way too young and crossed, before my mother did in her 90s. These thoughts deliver now tears and a forgetfulness of the traditional childhood game as too quickly the Cape Cod Bridge appears in the distance.
Wow, that's so poignant. Thank you so much. I love the way the bridges connected all parts of the life in there. The drives were so kind of evocative, that kind of idea of, are we there yet? And the sneak hair pulls was one of my favorite bits. So thank you so much for contributing. That was awesome. Next, we have Vijaya. I'm not sure if she's got a flower in today. Vijaya.
No flower, just a little band. I couldn't
Oh,
find.
I like the band though. It's gorgeous.
We are the headdress ladies.
Totally. What have you got for us today?
Well, mine is a little gloomy, if people can stand a gloomy poem. It's a little sad, but I don't feel sad right now, so please don't mistake me for it. It's called Night of Rain and Wind, Mind Out of Time. Steady drip, drip, rhythmic tap-tapping of rain on birdhouse-shaped bird feeder, now empty of seeds, a betrayal on my part. But how can I keep feeding rats? Oh, I know they'll come if we let them. And mice and chipmunks and squirrels, so ubiquitous, endlessly nibbling away at seed after seed, greedy little things, when all I want to feed are birds. Selective kindness isn't all that kind, but I am bled dry tonight and every day. I summon up strength for everything with nothing left for me. It's what I choose. Why is that? Is it the same thing that makes us go for weeds with vehement vigor, leaving all the pretty flowers? Hypocrisy dooms me and I quail at my wan face in the mirror. The hour so late, house chores done, but not my work, and I sit, shaving the hours off bit by bit, whittling time into shapes that resemble sadness or a wan smile or a small question mark. Nothing compels me, not the pain in my shoulder, a constant presence, a reminder that all we get are diminishing returns in this human form. Not the reminder that if I do this or that, things will get better, clearing the stuff off my table or guest bed or off the floor where it sits like a fact of life will make it better, won't it? Not the memory of happiness that can be recaught, since happiness is a scarf in the wind and the wind hardly ever stops blowing. No, nothing compels me to make me get up, move myself, get to bed, face yet another day, knowing I'd rather fade away, but not slowly. I could blink out instead. Steady drip, drip, rhythmic tap-tapping of rain on birdhouse-shaped bird feeder, now empty of seeds, a betrayal perhaps, on my part of myself. Where there is emptiness, you need to find seeds to fill it. Else why live? Feed the birds, let them fly, even as you sit in your little self-made cage. Feed all the other critters too. Why not the rats? Why not the mice? Your cage gets smaller every day. Enough with the metaphors, time to sleep. My sleeve of care is unraveled beyond repair. I cannot let despair rule. I will not. It's a surrender. I will not be pulled under. I will repair to bed. Tomorrow will mend.
Wow, wonderful. So many great lines. I think my favorite is whistling time into shapes. What a great moment. But so many good lines in there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we are going to end with our dynamic duo, Cindy from the lounge, Bob from the kitchen. What do we got, Cindy, badass poet? I don't even think you're badass Brooklyn anymore. I think you're just badass.
Just bad wherever I am.
Yeah.
I'm going to read a very short one from an old chapbook. And this is from when I was doing a lot of online dating, which was many, many years ago. I haven't done that in a long time. And it's a silly poem, of course. It's only 4 lines. Love in the computer age. I once had a lover and my life was complete. He made a quick exit when I pressed delete.
You gotta love it. Cindy, I love it. It's really funny. I think you should go back to online dating. Let's do it. We'll get some more poems out of you that way.
Exactly.
Thank you from the, as she's affectionately known now, the living room laureate. So I guess we've got the kitchen laureate up next. Bob, what's going on in the kitchen? What's cooking in the kitchen?
Nothing yet.
Just you.
I have to wait until the reading's over to start cooking. Okay, I'm going to read something I haven't read for a very long time. It's from my book, Demographics, or the Hats They Are Allowed to Wear, that Quelle Press did as an ebook over a decade ago. And it actually are the group of poems I was working on before I started my information series. So, mirror that is forbidden or forgotten, that is waiting or waited, that is charged or changed, that is secret or sacred, that has lights or lines, that is blue or blown, that has seams or seams, that has sides or sky, that has hands or handles, that has eyes or ice, that is found or formed, that divides or divines, that forms the sum or sun.
That's how you do it. He's the king of assonance. So here, I'm going to take those vowel sounds with me into the rest of the day. I'm at the Newcastle Writers Festival, so I will tell them all that they need to be thinking about these language tips from you, Bob. And back to you, Mark.
Well, thanks, Bob. That was an amazing one.
Thank you.
I think you should delve deep into the assonance. I think that's one of your fortes for sure. But you have many others as well. So,
Thanks.
Once again, I'm so happy to have hosted this wonderful launch of spoke 10, and I thank you, Robert Kelly, Charlotte Mandell, Tiffany Higgins, Márcia Wayna Kambeba, Alex Simōes, and of course Sabine from Vietnam. It's been a fantastic reading. Also, I'd like to let you know that actually next week we have the intrepid David Shapiro, who, as you all know, is also getting along a bit. And we have Mark Statman from Oaxaca. We have Brenda Colutas and Joanna Furman from Hanging Loose Press. So please join us for that. But in the meantime, to sort of close us off here, I want to put a little thought in your heads about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. This poem is called A Sea Lion Scavenges for Limpets in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. In all the shades of violet, we do not see you clearly. Just in your blue-green or shades of blue and gray. Yellow is white, gray is gray, black is black, orange is blue or blue-green. And how might one even know of such unknown colors, colors unseen in our tribe, our close circle of family and friends and close-knit fiends? Oh, how we were intertwined within ourselves multiple times. We were all entangled in tangles. How strange a vine of kelp grows a foot, or a limpet an ear. How the whispering trumpet fish goes silent, and the oldest soul in the ocean mumbles in her sleep. And here and there, a treasured discovery like the bright blue rocks which never die, which I have gifted to my young bride. And she, in turn, gives me her promise of gentle, nurturing oceans of softly lapping wavelets and abundant froth, of the great raveling of ocean-bound souls, where we vowed to each other and all our ancestors never to give up hope. And thus we were raveled, and thus we found the Creator. Eventually, the limpet frees themselves and enters the bloodstream like everyone else. Remember, this is all seen in the blue-green. Thank you, everybody, for a wonderful reading. Have a fantastic rest of your weekend, and lots of poetry, love, kisses, and everything else. And don't forget, spoKe is out there. Look for it, buy it, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mark. Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, Alex. Thank you,
you,
Cassandra. I
everyone.
forgot to thank you
Thank
for the
you.
interview with John Kinsella. Thank you.
All
Bye.
good. Lovely to see you all.
Bye.
Peace, love, and wombats, I think.
Stay safe and
Yeah.
Mark, thank you, Cassandra. Thank you. It was another exquisite evening of poetry and so enjoyed.
Always fun. See you next week. Mwah.